Hello and welcome once again to Harry's Jeti Clinic. I'm going to do a different video this time, and it's going to be programming an entire model from scratch to see just how quick and easy it is. Bear with it because there will be some things we're doing which maybe you hadn't thought of, because I have not covered them in the series of videos I've done about little individual menu items. And there's a few items of interest in this model, which we apply to any model. My beautiful assistant today is this Robin 200 series with a 44cc two-cylinder horizontally opposed engine, which is beautiful because it cuts down vibration. I've done it in the colours and markings of one that I used to fly full size. I've logged many happy hours in these aircraft. They're just a world away from the stodgy Pipers and Cessnas. Points of interest to note, obviously we've got 4 servo wings, but if I can one-handedly remove the canopy, see inside here, a few little extra things of interest, and there we go. We have, come on, back into focus please, thank you. We have 2 elevator servos, so we've got to deal with that. As well as the throttle, we've got a choke servo. It's an assist receiver, but I won't be doing the programming of that. We've covered that fairly reasonably in another video. And also, get the canopy out of the way, down here we've got one of the clever little designs from rc-thoughts.com. This is the rev counter for telemetry, because the ignition unit for the DLE engine outputs an RPM signal, and it's a very simple little device to build to convert that into the Jeti telemetry, which we can then have on our transmitter. It's the simplest one to build, by the way. Most of the designs involve an Arduino board, which is the processor and the software, and then a sensor such as your GPS receiver, a G meter, current meter, whatever. This one, the sensor bit is basically done by the ignition unit, and it's passing out the signal. So all that's on here is an Arduino board. So you literally wire it up the right way, put the firmware onto it from the rc-thoughts.com software, and you've got an RPM counter. Lovely. Also, we've got nose leg steering as well as the rudder. Right, let's dive into this. Now, if you have any brand of transmitter with sophisticated software, you'll find there are often multiple ways of doing things. So with Jeti. So what I'm going to show you is not the way to do it. I'm going to show you a way to do it. If you do it a different way and it works and it doesn't give you any unexpected gotchas when you're flying, then the way you've done it is perfectly valid. I should say I originally programmed this model when I first got it about 2.5 years ago, and the way it's programmed is thank you dear, quite different to the way I'm going to do it today, because over the years I've learned what I think are neater and quicker ways within Jeti to do it, because I suspect we all tend to default to trying to use servo endpoints to set up things, which is not always the best way, because it can have unexpected consequences, especially if you're trying to use subtrims as well. Subtrims and endpoints both influence each other, and you can end up in a sort of vicious circle trying to home in on what you want. So we'll also be using today some of the functions that I've not done individual videos about, but let's see if we can do this in a oneer and show the sort of sophistication and ease that it can be done once you know your way around the Jeti transmitter. So let's dive straight in. Model, new model. I should say I have not rehearsed this at all, so we'll find out along the way the truth about how quick and easy it is, because this is being done as if I'd come new to it. To say, you can't say, oh well, you programmed it 2.5 years ago, because I did it a totally different way then. Select our aero, go ahead. The wing type, of course, is a 2 flaps, 2 ailerons. The tail type, it's not quite a 1 horizontal, 1 vertical, it's a 2 horizontal, 1 vertical. There we are. It thinks it's an elevator, which gives us a clue to one of the menus that will now appear. If you select a 1H1V, the elevator menu simply doesn't exist, but select a 2 horizontal, in other words 2 elevators, 1 vertical, in other words 1 rudder, and the elevator menu will appear. Okie doke. Engine count, there is 1. No air brakes, no gear, no need for gyros. So we carry on, and here's our functions. Okay, but we're going to change some of these. If you've seen my videos about best ways how to set up your flaps, I'm going to be using flight modes. So we don't actually want a control there, which seems bizarre if you're not used to it, but trust me, it's brilliant. Also, I'm going to need steering, because that's how I'll control my nose wheel steering. I won't be mixing rudder to it. It has a function all of its own, which is by far the best way. So OK to that, and it will be using same stick as the rudder. There we go. And I also want a choke function, because there's a servo operated choke on the engine here. Okay, and I need a switch for that, and I will use switch H here. There we go, and I think that's all my functions done. Yep. So we forward again, and it's automatically assigned the servos for me. I just need to do a quick check that this is the same sequence as the model, because I don't want to rewire all the model. So I should have throttle, aileron 1, flap 2, aileron 2, elevator 1, rudder, elevator 2, steering and choke. No, I'm just going to swap steering and choke around. If you're doing it from scratch, you can leave these as they are, because you can then plug in to suit. But say my model's already set up in a different memory. I don't want to re-plug everything. So I'll just change that one to the choke, and that one to the steer. And I've got what's in the model. Yes, it's an assist, and I would set up the gyro stuff, but to save a bit of time, I'm not going to do that in this video. You can see my assist videos for how to do those. Create and activate the model, yes. Those will do fine for the moment, say yes. Pair the receivers now, yes. I will go and switch the model on. And we should have a working model. You release the receiver, yes.
Initialized. Armed.
Lovely. If I give a little wiggle to the sticks, yeah, things are moving. I'm only giving a little wiggle because, remember, at this stage, if it's an unknown model for the first time, you don't want to overdrive the servos, push something beyond its mechanical limit, and break a linkage or a hinge or whatever, or try, stalling your servos against the throttle carburetor. Say OK to that. Right, off we go. First thing to do, I think, will be to check the directions of the controls. So I'll just gently move the ailerons. Yeah, they're going the right way, so I don't need to servo reverse those. The twin elevators, they're both going together and both going the right way, so I don't need to reverse those. The rudder, that's going the wrong way, so I need to reverse the rudder. And the nose wheel steering, it's going the right way, so I don't need to reverse that. Throttle, that's going the wrong way, so I need to reverse throttle as well. And the choke, choke on, choke off. We'll say that's fine, because I don't really know which way it's going. Okay, so we can pop into here, into model, into servo setup, press the button, move forward to rudder. I'll come down and reverse the rudder. Quick check, that's now going the right way. Okay, come back up and down here to throttle was the other one I said needed changing. So throttle now going the right way. Yep, okie doke. Say okay for the moment. We've got those going. Now, right, well, let's start setting up some travels. First of all then, I'm going to go to the ailerons. Now, as I say, you might just hop straight to your servo setups and set servo travel limits there, but I'm going to show you another lovely menu that Jeti has for doing this in fine-tuning. We'll go to aileron differential. And here we have our two aileron servos. Remember, Jeti does from left to right, and there's only two aileron servos in this wing, so it's the left wing and the right wing. So the left wing servo, servo 1, right wing servo, servo 2. Always remember that you want to plug your servos into the receiver in that sequence. Where it says S1 is the furthest left servo, S2 is the next servo to the right, S3 to the next one to the right of that, S4 to the right of that. Okay, and we've got up and down travels. So not only can we adjust differential, we can adjust the travel full stop in this menu. It's not like some less sophisticated transmitters would just give you a % differential. No, you've got very fine tuning here. So before I go wiggling the ailerons full stick, what I'm going to do is come down and adjust these, press the button again, to a much lower travel. You can see symmetry is switched on, so both of them are coming down with me. And I'm doing this just as a safety precaution, as I say, to go to very low travels initially, so that I don't overdrive things and break the mechanism. So I push left, and the left aileron's up a bit, and the right aileron's gone down a bit. So at the moment, let's take symmetry off. I'll go to servo 1. Symmetry is off. So now if I adjust it, all I'm just adjusting is the up travel on servo 1. So I push that up and I think, yeah, I need some more. Could be better if I go into it, wouldn't it? There we go. So imagine you've got your meter on the control surface and you just turn the dial until the meter says you've got the travel that the instructions say. And that's it. That's its up travel done. Come across. I'll do servo 2 now. So I go that way. Yep, servo 2's come up. Go into it. I've got my meter on the surface, imagine, and I just turn the dial until I've got the relevant up travel. Lovely. Come out of that line, come down here, back into servo 1, make sure symmetry is off. Oh, it's gone back to 100, so let's turn that way down. Turn that one way down while we're at it. So back to servo 1. And if I move the stick to the right, the servo goes down, and as I adjust the value, yep, this servo endpoint's moving. Let's say, well, we'll just say that their instructions called for equal travels. But if they didn't, this is where you could set it. So we'll say to that one, and let's say that one did the same thing. By the way, just because the instructions call for the travels up and down being the same doesn't mean these numbers up and down will end up the same, because obviously there can be tiny variations in the servo's precision, tiny variations in your linkage and the horn positions and stuff. So it's just a demonstration. What you would actually do is just turn it up and down until your travel meter says you have got what's correct. Say OK. Now that's our ailerons set up. Beautiful. Now let's do the same for the elevator, and because we chose the 2H menu setting at the start, this elevator menu, which hasn't appeared before, appears. And here we go. And it's giving you elevator and ailerons. And this is in the assumption that you might want to have an elevator tail, particularly some jets where the two independent tailplanes work as ailerons as well as elevators. But it's defaulting to 100% travel and no aileron travel. Now this is not an individual up and down travel. You would still need to use the servo setup, either your endpoints or the servo balancer, to exactly fine tune them. But at least we can go to it. Symmetry back on again. I'll turn both of them way down, and I can then move the elevator and see that, oh yeah, 100% would have been pretty nasty actually. So I'm glad I turned it way down. We'll say that it's there. Okay, so we've set they're both the same. See, if symmetry is off, you can set a different travel, but it applies equally up and down. So again, using your throw meter, you might want to use the servo endpoint or the balancer just to exactly match what you need to do. Say OK there. So that's my aileron set, my elevator set. Okay, rudder. Rudder and throttle we'll have to do in the servo setup menu. So we go here, servo setup. I say you have to do it here. You could do it in the rudder function curve. You could do it in the rudder dual rates. I'm going to do it here. I don't need any subtrim on it, so I'm just going to click on that. And if I move the rudder, that's because I'm in the throttle, you numpty. Not the rudder. Well, we're in the throttle. I've got to set that anyway, so we'll set that while I'm here. And, you know, as you move the stick, once you've activated the number, it jumps to whichever end of the stick you're at. And we think, ooh, yeah, we're binding at the end of the carb there. Oh, I'm being a numpty, aren't I? There. So that stops it binding at that end, and I come back and I find idle's binding a little bit. And it stops it binding there. So that's the throttle done. Lovely. Come out of that. Oh, pay attention, boy. See, I told you it was unrehearsed. And my rudder, I'm going to come down, select that. Again, you move the rudder. The value jumps depending on which way you're moving the stick, so you don't have to choose, try and remember which way it is. And we'll say, yeah, rudder travels to extreme. Let's turn that down to a nice low number to start with. Then you put your meter on it and wind it up to the number you actually need. And the same in the other direction. You find, ooh, you know, that's going to strain the linkages. Turn it down to a low number, push the stick hard over, put your angular meter on it and wind it up to the number it needs. Okie doke. And same with the nose wheel steering. Okay, we find, again, take that one down to a nice low number, and then watch it, push our stick hard over, and we watch it and we can adjust it until we get the steering we want. And that one we can adjust to the steering we want there. That's it done. And up to the choke. And that one is on a switch, so it really does need a bit of careful manipulation. Get that one down there and click on it. Switch and that one down so it's not being strained. Okay. The only one left to do is the flaps. So we go to fine tuning, flight modes. We're going to add 2 flight modes to it. Yes. Copy the default again. Yes. And we'll have a takeoff mode, which to save time I'll just label as T. I'll label it as TA because I've gone into a second letter now. Takeoff, OK, and there's my flap switch. That's my, so I put the switch, 3-position switch, not in the takeoff position. Come to the switch, press it, move it to the takeoff position, say OK. I come back here and I'll set a, for the sake of the demonstration, quite a slow delay 2 seconds. Good. Come down to this, name it, get rid of the existing name, call it L for land. Let's have it as a capital. There we are. Okay. And again, we'll give it a 2-second delay. Switch is not in the landing position, it's one away from it. So I move it to the landing position, say OK, lovely, and then default will be my normal cruise around mode, but we'll have a delay on that so the flaps don't snap up when we switch it back to that mode. Say OK. OK, we're done there for the moment. And that means we can go to, I'll go digital trim first, because what I'm going to do is switch on elevator trim per flight mode, separate. Yeah, so in each of those 3 flap positions, I've got a completely independent elevator trim. And then in flight, my maiden flight, I can set it up to the sort of speeds and powers I think I'd be using in those different modes, switch to them, and then trim the elevator to suit. So we say OK to that one, and we come down to the butterfly flaps menu. Right, control, we'll go first of all into switch at one end of position, and we've got to switch it to the permanent on position. There's a couple of ways of doing this. I like the log max one. There are others, but you've got to be very careful. You don't just use the switch on its own, because the position of the switch becomes a number which mixes into the values you're going to put in the menu. And it can actually cause, oh, what's going on here? So, let's say log max. Okay, move the switch again. It would help if I changed it to separate, wouldn't it? There we go. So control max there, control max there, control max there. Right, so default mode, log max means it's on. Takeoff mode, it's on. Landing mode, it's on. I don't need an offset because we're not using butterfly control. Don't need delay because the flight mode's doing that. And we can come down to ailerons and flaps adjustment. I don't need to adjust the ailerons in these settings. So I will go to the default flight mode, and this is going to be flaps in the normal flying position. So I will try winding a value, and my flaps are moving. Help if I switch symmetry on again, it would just make it a bit quicker to move both of them. Which way are they going? Ah, they're coming up nicely. Okay. The right flap's at neutral. The left flap, which is S1, is not. So I'll switch symmetry off and I'll give it a bit more beans. There it is. So that is the normal fly around flap set. Switch to the takeoff setting. Where do they go to? Do you know what? That looks nice enough. Again, you get your instruction manual out, put your incidence meter on them, and you can tune each one exactly to what it needs to be. Let's go landing mode. Switch symmetry off on again, and let's wind in some really powerful landing flap. We'll go with that. And again, put your meter on it, get your instructions out, and you can set each one exactly precisely. And that, folks, is our travels set up. How lovely. Say OK to that. We don't need any elevator adjustment because we're not using crow brake. Remember, we've got per flight mode elevator trim. I don't need to tune it. So I'm happy with that. And there we go. Let's have a look at the basics of this working, and then we'll do a little bit more stuff. So I'll bring my flaps to the flying condition. There they come up. Come on, focus camera. It's not very good at refocusing this thing, is it? And so I've got my ailerons. got my 2 elevators. Got my rudder going. Got my flaps working nicely. And they've each got their independent elevator trim, which will move just as slowly because remember it's working on the flight mode as well. I've got my throttle working. I've got my choke servo working and set up, and I've got my nose wheel steering going. Okay, have we reached the end? Well, not quite. There's a few nice things we can do now. I hope that showed you that obviously we weren't setting up the exact travels with a meter. That takes a little bit of time. But in terms of finding your menus, getting your programs, getting the parameter you want, for this, I wouldn't call this a complex model by any means, but it's a bit beyond the norm. And it's actually quite straightforward and easy, once you see how, to get this basically set. What other things can we do? Well, please refocus. There we go. We can go into timer sensors. Let's have a look at the logging setup. And it's found the RC Thoughts RPM meter. Yippee dippy doo. Log the RPM. I tend not to, and I can't see me needing to read it afterwards. Say OK to that. So we can now go to displayed telemetry, add. From the system, I always like to know the receiver voltage. Yes, so we'll have that. Double size, no. I always like to have the antenna data. Use double size. Don't need to because it's a single receiver, so it should all be covered. A1, A2 and Q in one line. Add. From telemetry, we'll have the RPM. Thank you very much. Use double size. No. Say OK. Let's have a look at what that looks like. There we go. We've got receiver voltage, our antenna information, and our RPM direct off the engine. Trust me, that works beautifully. It really is nice just being able to watch your idles and pickups and everything straight on your screen without having to mess about with a separate handheld meter. What else can we do? Right, menu, advanced properties, timer sensors. I will set voice output, single voice announcements. You may have wondered why in some other videos I always use single voice announcements to get the Q data. It's because it's not available in sensors and variables for some reason, unless they've sneaked it in a recent update. So switch will be, I always use my spring-loaded switch away from me, is that one, and the sensor will be system Q. Okay.
Signal 100%.
Lovely. And what else do I want? I don't really use it, but just for the sake of showing you, I'll set the trigger switch to that one. Say OK, sensors and variables, RPM. And we'll have it on the trigger switch. We can leave priority as low because there's nothing else, so there's nothing else ahead of it. Say OK to that.
0.
Oh, all it says is 0, but we know it's the RPM, so whatever. If you really want to, you can mess about with JSON files and such like to make it say RPM. Okay, and what else might we do? Oh yes, the choke warning. We've got a choke switch, but believe me, you, having not flown the model for a while, you're going to think, oh, can't remember which way was which. And the hatch is on and we can't see down into the cowl. So we will use, is it voice output? No, of course it's not. It is in advanced properties, sounds on event, add, switch, switch. That way I'm going to be, is my choke on? So I say OK, I say file, and I don't think you will have this one because I don't think it comes with Jeti, but I made this at the rc-thoughts.com TTS, text-to-speech menu. Lovely. Choke. Did I say choke on? Yes. Choke on. And if I add another one, boom, ba-dum, ba-dum, that'll be choke off. gone a bit too far there. Choke off. Say OK. And now...
Choke on. Choke off.
There we go. And there, basically, we have a model completely set up from scratch. And the video is 30 minutes long, but I rambled on at the start, which I hope you skipped over, because who cares about me rabbiting on for a few minutes. So in something like 25 minutes, without doing the very fine-tuning of the travels, we've at least done all the basic radio setup. So I hope that was of interest to you.